Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys stopping by, taking a look at my video. For all of my people in the Philippines, it's midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, so it's kind of early still. But magandang umaga, maayong buntag, higala, and kaibigan. A king ma kaibigan. I kind of got it. I'm kind of flowing it and stuff like that. Kamusta na to you guys. Appreciate you guys stopping by, taking a look. For anybody that's coming from Armenia, Vok Juven, merci for coming and taking a look at my video real quick. As you guys know, by this point, Wesley is not currently playing anymore in the New in Chess Classic. He was eliminated, but I figured I'd go ahead and go back and grab a little game that he played. This was Levon Aronian and Wesley So's second game of that first round that they played in the knockout portion. And it was pretty interesting. So I figured I'd go ahead and cover it real quick. So if you guys are ready to go, let's go ahead and take a look and see what we got for the game. All right, so we got D4. Let me tap this volume up. Okay, we're good already. All right, so I got D5, knight to F3, knight to F6, bishop F4. So we have the London system. This is something we saw, quite frequently. Like I said before, whenever you get into a tournament, usually you pretty much stick to the same thing within the tournament. For those people that kind of change openings periodically and stuff, they'll usually keep, chipping away at the same thing, for the entire tournament. You don't have a lot of time to really, figure out something new. So you got C5, E3, knight to C6. You got knight B to D2. All pretty standard stuff. This is stuff that we've seen before. So we see queen coming to B6, always trying to eye this pawn down anytime this bishop moves outside that chain. That's not the move. He didn't go C3. That's my bad. Pawn took on C5, and then we see queen taking B2, which can be somewhat beneficial for black because of the fact that now you have doubled pawns for white. Most likely this pawn is going to drop off the board at some point, so it doesn't really too much matter. Pretty much just taking on B2 because you can. So we see rook to B1. We got queen to C3. We have bishop to B5. We have G6. And then we come to the novelty of the game, which is E4. And E4 is actually the best move in the position. You're trying to establish a good pawn center. This knight is pinned. You have possibilities of bishop coming here, which we do see in the game. So, we have a really, really nice central control for white. So the bishop comes to G7. We have bishop to E5, knocking the queen away. So there's really not a lot of places the queen can go. So we see queen to A5. Pawn takes D5. And of course, we're not trying to take here because we're just going to be dropping the bishop. So it kind of forces A6, which is, the best possible move in the position. Because, your knight is attacked and it is pinned to the king. So you're kind of in a do or die situation. So it's always nice when you can get your opponent into those situations where they only have a few moves to choose from. It makes things a lot easier as far as studying theory and just as far as just pure calculation. When you get in a situation where the person basically has one or two moves, it streamlines your calculation and it makes it just a little easier. So the bishop takes on C6. We have pawn takes C6 and then we have D6. Now something else that was possible as well. And it ends up being pretty similar, but it was just an alternate way that you could go. Is pawn taking C6, the queen taking on C5. You castle for white. Queen takes C6. You have you gain some tempos on the queen with knight to D4. Queen comes to D5, and you see rook to E1. And as you guys will see in the next position, it's slightly different, but it's overall pretty much about the same. So like I said, we did see D6 castles. We have pawn takes E7, rook to E8. Castles by white. Queen does take on C5, and we see rook to E1. So as you can see, it's fairly similar. It's just you have kind of like a little different dynamics as far as these pawns and stuff go. But, overall, you have your rooks on these open files. Half open file for white here. And you are very active with all of your pieces. So, you're going to be dropping this pawn at some point. But everything is fairly equal. It's just different, a different imbalance as far as like, two bishops and a knight against two knights and a bishop. So we see bishop coming to F5. The bishop comes to D4. The queen goes to D5. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, like, why didn't we take on C2? That was a possibility. You definitely could have taken on C2. and it would have been just fine. You know, it pretty much would have been the same thing. So it wasn't a poison pawn, but I think Wesley So, you know, he might have, you know, calculated something or thought he saw something or something like that. And maybe he just didn't, you know, he just didn't like it. So the rook came to b3. We saw c5. It gets pretty dicey in this position here. There's an interesting feature that comes up. So we see c5, rook comes to e5. We see queen to d7. Bishop takes on c5, which it was probably slightly better to take with the rook on c5. We saw knight to e4. Rook came to d3. We saw queen to b7. Knight takes e4. And this is giving up the exchange. So that's why I was saying it's kind of an interesting, you know, scenario that comes up here. So we see bishop takes e5, knight takes e5, queen takes e4, and we see rook to d8. Now, you gave up the exchange, but the major thing in the situation is the fact that you do have this really, really severely passed pawn. So that is a very relevant feature of the position, because, you know, black is in kind of like a very defensive position, and of course you just can't trade here because you're just going to be getting the queen. And then you're going to be having to take and stuff like that. You're just going to be in a really good, well, actually, no, because this is check. Because I was like, wait a minute, that's a back rank mate. No, it's check. So, yeah, you got some, I think that's mating actually coming up. Yeah, you're going to be getting mated here. Oh, that's bad. That's ugly. I just saw that. I'm kind of like flowing with the game right now. So, yeah, we're not doing that. So, the king comes down to g7, and this kind of this puts black in a very peculiar situation. So in the game, we saw f3. So just to run through some moves, we saw f3. The queen took on c2. We saw queen to d4 because one of the themes is one of the things that is relevant in the situation is the fact that this diagonal is open. And the king is very vulnerable, and you do have a dark square bishop and a queen, and you are kind of locked up defensively here. So we see f6, the rook takes a8, rook takes a8, and then we see knight down to c4. But if we back up, there was a killer move in the position after king to g7, and it pretty much accomplished the same thing that f3 did for you, but it doesn't drop the pawn. So if you guys want to go ahead and pause the video real quick and see if you could find this killer move, go ahead and do so real quick. Okay, cool. So basically with f3, you're trying to create luft for your king, so that you're not going to be getting back rank mated when you do raise your queen up. So if you don't create luft or something, you're going to be losing this pawn here, and then moving the queen is going to be back rank mating you. So that's not going to be good. So that's what f3 aimed to do. Now, to do the same thing, but just to place an attack on a piece that's not the queen, because the queen's going to move anyway with this capturing of this pawn, is actually, let me see. Let me not do that. Oh, okay. Exit out of that. Hit the wrong button. It was actually g4. So g4, it forces the issue of this bishop, and it doesn't allow you to actually take this pawn because this queen is defended. So this is a double protected pawn. So, like I said, if you were to see something like, queen taken here, you would just snap off the bishop here. And then, like I said, this queen is protected. So, you would see bishop to e6. Then you would see f3. So it's the same type of idea, but just kind of like a tweak in the way you did it. The queen comes back to b7. You have to be very careful. Because, you are vulnerable on this diagonal, so you don't want to just take here. That's going to be losing your queen. So the queen has to retreat back to b7, and then you see queen to d4. And as you can see, like I said before, this king is very, very vulnerable on this diagonal. So it's really, really, nice for white. So like I said, we did see f3 and all these moves here. The rook took on the a8, knight to c4. We saw queen to b1 with check, king coming to f2. The queen taking a2 with check. And then we saw king to g3. And this is a very, very critical position in the game. There is only one move. Actually, no, there's multiple moves. But as far as what we see in the game is queen to e2. Now, as far as queen moves go, there is only one queen move that just basically doesn't lose the game on the spot. And if we run through the moves with this position here, we saw queen to e2, and we saw queen to d8. And now you have a problem because you're going to be promoting, and you know, there's just really not a good way now to defend. So if we back up, instead of queen to e2, the golden move was actually queen to b1. And then if you see queen to d8, you can protect with b8. So what we had in the game, like I said, was queen to e2. We saw queen to d8, which is threatening the rook. So it's really, you know, you're not really too much worried about protecting this queening square as you are about like just literally losing your rook and then queening. So we saw queen to e1 with check. The bishop comes down to f2. We see queen to c1. And then the very interesting thing in the position, I'm not sure if Levon Aronian actually had auto queen on. But he took a little bit of time to double check and make sure he didn't, because the problem with queening is if you do hit your queen immediately, which seems like, I mean, it's just like super killer, you're actually going to be getting mated in one with queen to g5. And that's that sucks. I mean, you got two queens, you got all these pieces, and you're getting mated. It sucks. So queen came to c1. The queen came to c1, and then we saw e8 equals knight with check. So that eliminated the issue of getting mated in one. So the king came to h6. We saw queen taking on f6, and then we saw rook taking e8, and then we saw knight to d6, and we saw queen to c7. Then we had a really nice in-between move with bishop to b6. Because, you know, of course you cannot capture here because you're going to be getting checked here. And then the king is going to be, you know, actually that's going to be mating. So you're not even worried about the queen. So, yeah, I don't know. Bishop b6. It's just kind of deflecting the queen. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like that. I mean, you can. Oh, yeah, no, I know. Because the knight is pinned. Yeah, I didn't look at this. So that's why I'm just kind of like, you know, winging it right now. You have to deflect this queen. So the queen goes back to b8, and then you see bishop to d4. Yeah, I mean, you're going to be checking here, and the bishop probably going to be coming here. It is mating very quickly. So, yeah, that was a very interesting game. And it could have went the wrong way for Aronian if, you know, he actually promoted to the queen. But yes, it was in this position right here that Wesley So did resign the game, so that was an interesting game. Yeah, it's not the best, you know, Wesley So losing, but I mean it was a very nicely played game, you know, by both sides either way, and it's really hard, I think, to find that queen move because you just want to be very active when you're moving your queen and stuff. So queen to b1 probably didn't seem very active to him, but. Anyway, so that is that game. And like I said, they're playing the finals like coming up today. This is the last day for the tournament. So I'll see if I can throw down another video at some point. I will see what my time's looking like. But Mariming Salamat Po Sa Nananud Ing a King Ma video. Kai Bigan. Appreciate you guys very much. And merci to anybody coming from Armenia. And I'll see you guys next time. All right.